It is a very tech-led business. It needs to be sort of promoted more as being a tech industry rather than just being paper, ink and basically water balance, to be honest. There's digital marketing involved, and I think a lot of the businesses now, rather than just doing Litho, are going into digital, they're going into personalisation and then moving into different streams, really.
Welcome to episode 4 of From Brief to Broadcast, brought to you by 8 Group. This is episode 4, and in this episode, a little bit different. So we're going to talk about the importance of colour. And to do that, I'm joined by 8 Group's technical director, Andy Clyde. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Lance. So my current role is technical director for the 8 Group. So basically my primary role is working to support customers to give them the best product and the best route of manufacture to make sure they get the quality they're looking for. It nearly needs to encompass a lot more, and I think it is doing, to be honest. You need to sell the full services really to help businesses market their businesses and whether that's to consumer or business to business.
Welcome to episode 4 of From Brief to Broadcast, brought to you by 8 Group. In this series, we aim to cover a broad range of topics. So far, we've covered digital marketing, digital brands turning back to direct mail, and also the importance of data in marketing. This is episode 4, and in this episode, a little bit different. So we're going to talk about the importance of colour. And to do that, I'm joined by 8 Group's technical director, Andy Clyde. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Lance.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So let's kick off. Then with tell me about how you got into the printing industry. Where did it all begin?
Well, it's a bit by chance, really, I suppose. My parents were both in the forces, and they were both in the Navy, and they were trying to push me down the forces route. Grew up in a village. I was at school starting to do my A-levels, and a guy in the village who I'm still good friends with now had his XR2i, the red one with the pepper pot wheels, and his FZR 600 motorbike. And I said, "What did you do?" And he went, "Oh, I'm a printer." So I thought, well, this could be a good idea. He seems to have plenty of money in his back pocket. So cut a long story short, there was a careers evening one day at the school I was attending at the time, Sixth Form College. A local printer called Rydell Printers were there. They said, "Do you fancy coming for a week's work experience?" I did. Yeah, the rest is history, I suppose.
Yeah, it's funny how these things happen. You can either fall into it or it's a kind of a planned route. So by default, by design, but it's a funny old one, isn't it?
Yeah.
When people get into the industry. Yeah. It is indeed. And then what about outside work? What do you do for downtime?
I've always been quite sporty, really. I've played football, played cricket, and then now the legs are starting to get a bit older. It's turned to golf and fishing. Do quite a bit of sea rock fishing. So luckily on the northeast coast, there's some good cod marks in the winter, and there's a bit of bass fishing as well off the coast. So just try and unwind really after a day's work. To be honest, get some fresh air and try and get a bit of exercise.
Good to hear.
And the golf is quite bad, to be honest. Yeah, it's good days, bad days, but not the best.
I'm sure that's the same for everyone who plays golf. No question about it. Okay, so let's get stuck into the work side and the point of this podcast, or today's episode at least. So tell the listeners about what your current role is and what that entails.
Yeah, so my current role is technical director for the 8 Group. So basically my primary role is working to support customers to give them the best product and the best route of manufacture to make sure they get the quality they're looking for. That's advising on substrates, that's advising on size, on finishing requirements of the printed piece, and making sure that their data is correctly formatted to give them the best quality job they can, really, to be honest. So it really encompasses everything from concept right the way through to delivery and helping them deliver the product to their end customer, really. Okay.
And why is that so important? What's important about that? Because I think, just from my perspective, that role is not always commonplace in a smaller sort of print and marketing services business. So, we obviously pride ourselves in the value add side, but why is that important, that role that you play?
Well, it's very easy for someone to send in an inquiry, and the inquirer will say, "I want X amount of leaflets, I want on X paper," and you turn around the price and you say, "Right, that's the price to produce those." But if you get under the bonnet and then try and understand what they're trying to achieve, you can add value by potentially giving them options, looking at, like I said before, substrates, look at different printing techniques, whether it falls into the litho bracket, whether it falls into digital, does it need to be personalised, what they're trying to achieve, what is their return on investment. So it's not just being a sausage factory and just really turning around a price. It's offering a full service and a full consultancy advice to try and understand what they're trying to achieve, to try and give them the best product.
And that leads into, I suppose, the next question around, you're our sort of pre-press expert.
Yeah.
I guess with every project, we start with the end in mind, but obviously pre-press is key. Why is pre-press so important? And bearing in mind, some of the listeners to this might not be print experts, might have the experience that you've got, or even I've got, and yours is far more than mine in terms of colour, that's for sure. But just thinking about that sort of basic level, why is pre-press so important? Because obviously nowadays with platforms like Canva and other technology, even Word or PowerPoint, you can create artwork out of pretty much anything, can't you? But obviously, when you're getting onto a sort of commercial print production side, pre-press is key. Why is that?
Well, it's evolved a lot over the years, really, pre-press, because going back a couple of decades ago, it was very, very buoyant market. It was reprographics. So you couldn't just buy an Apple Mac off the shelf, get yourself an Adobe Creative Cloud license and be able to design something. You had to have specialist softwares. You had to have specialist scanning of transparencies. There was no phones to actually capture images. So now it's quite easy for somebody to, like I say, buy a Mac or a PC, put InDesign on, create, or even PowerPoint or Word, create a PDF and think that can be printed. Well, there's 1,000 ways you can create a PDF, but there's only so many correct ways you can create a file that's fit for purpose, whether that's going to be printed litho, we can go on and on flexo, or actually printed digital. So really understanding and also making that file fit for purpose is key, because you can only really print what you're given. So making sure, don't get me wrong, in workflows you can do certain things and you can put certain fixes in. But if you can help educate your customer to make sure they get their file right in the first place and understand how that file needs to be prepared and formatted, makes a huge difference to efficiencies and the end quality.
And you just reminded me of something. Then obviously we've been in the industry a similar amount of time. It took me about, when he said about repro and reprographics, took me back to my early days in print, and when we were dealing with base artwork boards, transparencies, scanners, and film. And again, for the younger audience out there, the ones who perhaps weren't around or weren't in the industry at all, when back in those days, I remember going into London, see London agencies, and coming out with literally an enormous bag with artwork in, or if it was a repro house with film, which I had to then cart all the way back to the repro department for them to then get ready to make each printing plate, set a film for each colour. And the process back then was so labour intensive and so slow. I can remember at Colour Graphic in Leicester, we had a repro department called Colour Plan, and there must have been, and they were working I think they were working 24 hours to actually accommodate the 24-hour production. So you probably had, I don't know, a team of 5 or 6 people per shift just in repro. So just doing plate making, preparing artwork, scanning. When you think about that now, the difference is chalk and cheese, isn't it? From a technology viewpoint.
Yeah. I worked at Pinder for 30 plus years. When I first got into the main Pinder site, there was 64 people in pre-press.
That's unbelievable.
Scanning, camera operators. Let's say you can go on and on what needed to be done then, because we're talking about times before there was broadband, before it was fibre and the links, before computers had 32K of RAM. There wasn't gigabyte, wasn't heard of. It was megabytes and things back in those days, and everything was transferred the next step via disk. So things have really, really, really changed. But things obviously change for a reason, but that's makes it more and more prevalent, really, to ensure that your workflows are slick and really educating the customer to make sure everything's correct, to make sure it falls correctly through your systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has really changed.
No, it has. And also, again, this goes back to my my time at college as well, and yours. And I remember one of the things I was first taught was about light, about how we look at print and light. So why is light so important to how we view colour?
Well, papers have a lot of what's called optical brightening agents in them. So you have to standardise how you view things, and that the graphic industry uses D50 lighting, which is a graphics lighting to check colour. And then You have another one called D65, which is daylight. So it's really important, and it's even the surroundings as well, how you're viewing colour. So you could walk into a room where something, depending on how it fluoresces, will look nice and bright red. You can walk into the next room and it looks an orange. So control lighting, control practices all the way through the industry are really, really important.
And that's why,
completely different.
yeah, exactly. And that's why when we go to see a job on press somewhere, you'll have consistency of lighting, consistency of colour, light boxes that you and I know. And yet, like you say, you take a job outside, look at it in the car park, it will look different to what it did on press because of the light. It makes such a big difference, doesn't it? And not everybody realises that.
And the colour surrounding it as well, and how long you look at the colour, because it affects your vision. You know, if you are press passing or if you're staring at something, you look and look and look and look, and it will distort how you perceive that colour today.
Absolutely, yeah, big difference.
It's important. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. Give me an example of how you add value to our customers. So I was thinking about, you know, your role and where you do that real value add piece.
As an example, we had a large catalogue that was over 600 pages, and there was 12 versions recently. Now, we have an online portal from Kodak called Insight, and what Insight allows you to do is you can have customers interacting with the system. So what I did was various training sessions with remote designers. Now, there was 12 language versions, so we had designers in the Far East, in South America, in North America, 3 different design studios within Europe, and then we had marketeers who were in separate offices, and they wanted a slick way of being able to upload their catalogue, annotate any potential amends, ask the designers who were in remote locations to actually then make the amends, re-upload the amended files onto the system. Well, did 4 or 5 training sessions, intuitive about how the system works, then basically left them to it. They signed it all off, all 12 versions of the 600-page catalogue, and there was 32,000 transactions in between designers, marketeers, buyers. Signed it all off. All we were looking for is, fantastic, went to print, we printed it, delivered it. So it's all about making sure everything's correct and giving the customer the ownership of managing their own project. You know, going back, or still how some businesses work, they'll send in a PDF, the PDF will then be processed, emailed back for approval, then there might be amends, so version 2 comes in. If you can automate a lot of that process, 32,000 transactions is a lot of human resource to actually manually process. If you can train and educate your customers to use an online platform and to sign off their jobs, it makes life so much easier.
And actually, of course, nowadays we are all used to doing things sort of self-serve, aren't we? So in a way, it's quite natural to be able to do that. Whereas, you know, back in the day, it was backwards and forwards. You know, sending something to your customer, sending it back to the printer. But obviously now people are just so used to self-serve portal. So that portal you've described there, that actually is quite a natural, I suppose, instinct thing for probably clients to actually like using as well, because they're in control of it a little bit.
Yeah, and one doesn't fit all. So what you're able to do is you're able to set the system bespokely for workflow. So first of all, you need to understand how the customer works, because you don't want to give them any more work to do. You want to be as slick as possible. Their interface with you as the manufacturer needs to be seamless. And so you need to understand how they work, how can our system help them, and then it makes it completely seamless really between the two parties.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Thinking about your, dare I say, 55 plus years in the industry, yeah, man and boy and all that. What are your observations about how it has evolved, how technology has advanced, and where you see the future trends or technology taking it next?
It's obviously got more computerized, like every probably industry has really, but the fundamental litho process hasn't really changed, to be honest. It's all about the actual print process, all about efficiencies, and whether that's waste, whether that's efficiencies through process, so changing, for instance, energy efficient LED dryers compared to the lamp dryers, which use a lot more energy. So the actual litho process is about efficiencies. There's not a lot you can really change. It's always going to be ink, water, printing plates, blankets, and paper. There's not a lot else you can really do with that, to be fair. But it's been as slick as you can on the front end, because margins are getting tighter and tighter. You need to be as efficient as you can to ensure your business is sustainable.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? That because, like you say, I think the process itself hasn't really changed. Is it? It's just about efficiencies.
Yeah,
And I was at a print business a few weeks ago. They've invested heavily in the latest state of the art Heidelberg B1 press, and the
yeah,
setup time between jobs is just phenomenal. It's down to like a minute between jobs doing a full sort of 8 colour plate change. It's mind-boggling compared to what it was when I was an apprentice or when you were first starting out. It's just amazing how that the change. But the litho process itself is actually still the same, isn't it?
yeah. It's all about process control. It's all about being as efficient as possible, and you've got to challenge every part of the process really, and look and say, right, how can we make it more efficient? How can we make it better? And that goes from the front end, that goes from your estimating all the way through to your quoting, to your MIS system, to get that information through the factory. Even planning out where your kit is. How can we stop having to take plates from here to there? How can we make that less labour intensive
Mm.
and just try and be as efficient? But that goes for every business.
Yeah,
Any manufacturing business, really, they're always going to challenge how to make things better.
absolutely. Yeah.
And just look, but you can't stand still. You've got to look to invest all the time.
Yeah, indeed. And I suppose on the knowledge front, yeah, we both know that the sort of print knowledge pool is in decline. Which I suppose is worrying as we try and inspire the next generation or the younger generation to come into the industry. What do you think we can do as a collective across the industry to introduce more people into print or young people into print? Given now it's really tech led. What's your view on that?
Yeah, well, print was always think of ink and water and a bit of a dirty industry, really, but it's like you say, it's a technology-led business now, to be honest, and it encompasses the world of digital printing, but then digital overlaps into different platforms on your internet. So what's your print file might become your internet file for your flip book or something like that. So it is a very tech-led business. So it needs to be sort of promoted more as being a tech industry rather than just being paper, ink, and basically water balance, to be honest. But I think it's moving that way, and I said there's digital marketing involved, and I think a lot of the businesses now, rather than just doing litho, are going into digital, they're going into personalization, and then moving into different streams really to try and service customers as much as they can, not by just saying I can print you a catalogue and I can deliver you a catalogue. So it nearly needs to encompass a lot more, and I think it is doing, to be honest. You need to sell the full services really to help businesses market their businesses and whether that's to consumer or business to business.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, when you think about the technology and trying to inspire young people into the industry, I feel personally, like I have a responsibility, and like you do, as a dare I say it, an elder statesman or statesperson in the industry. We've been around, we've seen a lot, we've seen the old technology, we've seen the advances. For me, I think we have a responsibility to pass that down onto the next generation of people coming into the industry, because otherwise that knowledge will get lost somewhere. So we do need to inspire young people into the industry, and it's getting harder and harder. I mean, this is a common thread that you hear about being talked about at networking events I go to, or talking to customers and or suppliers. And how do we get how many apprentices have you got? We're lucky we've got an apprentice now. Callum, who's only 18, but they're hard to find, aren't they? And it's how you say to them, like you say, it's a tech-led business now. It's not a dirty industry like it was when we started out. It's very, you could almost, you look at our print room, the studio, it's more like a laboratory, and you can wear a white coat
Yeah,
in there and not look out of place.
yeah. Like I say, it's evolving, and that's the angle that needs to come to bring young people in. But you say every day. I know it's an old cliche. Every day is a school day. There's something happened yesterday when I was doing jobs out of the blue and never seen it before, and that's something that you're picking things up all the time, but that knowledge needs to be passed down to, like I said, the next generation and people that come in. Because there isn't really the print colleges anymore. A lot of it is now learning on the job and learning from experience. A lot of I've learned is just through the people I've worked with over the years, and it's the experience that it's hard to actually learn now, because like I say, systems, you have to learn the basics, and then once you understand the basics, a lot more is just picking things up as you go along.
Yeah, true. Your background obviously is vastly in litho or offset printing, as we call it as well. Since you've been at 8 Group, which I think is about 4 years now, I imagine you've learned a hell of a lot about digital printing. in that time?
Yeah, well, I did actually work on a digital press a long time ago, back in 95 or 96 it was. An Agfa Chroma press, if you can remember that.
Wow, yeah.
Real fed, based on like the Zycon engine. So digital has been around for a long time, but it's becoming more and more advanced now. And some of these hybrid presses, same as the press we have in Nottingham, where you're actually putting digital heads onto a litho chassis. The scope of what you can do now is phenomenal, really, to be honest. So they really do go hand in hand, litho and digital. But it's understanding the customer's requirement and understanding where that niche is for what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's very much what's fit for purpose, isn't it? I think I've a bit like you. I was first introduced to Inkjet when I was an apprentice in 1989. We were using Inkjet back then, but it was mono. It was like join the dots. The quality was poor. We were using it for coding, for numbering, a bit like what everybody would see a best before date on a tin of baked beans in the supermarket. That's inkjetted on. And that's the same inkjet that was used on paper, or still is, but the quality is obviously a different level now compared to what it was. But I look at inkjet particularly, which obviously is digital print, and how that technology and the quality is advanced just at a ridiculous pace. And it almost feels like it's that there's another turning point. I think it all comes down to the speed now, which is where obviously Litho's had to work hard, or the big OEMs, the press manufacturers of Litho kit, like your Heidelbergs, like your Kamoris, they've all had to work really hard with their technology, haven't they, to compete with digital, because digital's getting quicker. The quality is absolutely there, as we know with the KM1. I mean, you take a sheet off the KM1, you put it next to the same job that's off a B Heidelberg or Komori press, it will look the same. Nobody would know that it's been printed inkjet, and that technology is phenomenal. It's just about the speed now, I think, and that's the next stage for inkjet technology. Is if they can get that speed up, it's going to put more pressure on Litho, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. To be fair, the quality is, because it's a true 1200 dpi inkjet dot, is better than Litho, to be honest, because you're using high-speed inks, still using dots, so you're still getting quite a lot of dot gain, visible as well as mechanical dot gain. So the quality on digital is superior, but yeah, it comes down to speed. If they can build the engines that can actually keep up with the Litho chassis, similar to what with the KM1, then there's no reason why digital can't advance even further, really, to be honest.
Leads me on nicely to my next question. Litho v digital in a fight in 2026, who wins?
I think both have a place, don't they? Really, to be fair, it depends on substrate. It depends on run length. Out and out quality, digital wins hands down. Really, to be fair, because you've got KM1 as an example. You've got UV inks printing 1200 times 1200 dpi. There's no degradation from light, so basically the colour fast inks, you could put that into a picture on the wall and it'll stay like that for quite a long time. Litho has its place for high volume work because of what we talked about, because of speed to market, volume, and the size of the presses that you can produce.
Yeah.
Your newspaper supplements or some of your big high volume catalogue sections, it would take you too long to actually turn that around digitally. But yeah, they both have the place. They both have the place, to be fair.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. It's again, you touched on it there, the size of the press. I think obviously again, the press manufacturers, I think it was traditionally B3 was the biggest you could get. Now it's gone B2, with the KM1. There are B1 presses out there as well.
Yeah, the land of technology.
And it's only, exactly. It's only a matter of time, probably, before they become commonplace. And again, that pace, I'm sure, at the next Drooper, which will be, when will that be? 2020,
a couple of years, is it?
2028, will it be? Yeah, it'll be 2028, won't it? I think
2 years.
I think so. Yeah, I'm sure we'll see a lot of new technology out over in Germany then. Like we did when we were there at 2 years ago in 24. Yeah, it's very interesting. So, thinking about the listeners, perhaps people that are new to print, or mostly, or maybe been doing digital only, because we see a lot of digital marketeers who've kind of been digital by default, they then suddenly have to come into the world of print a little bit. What can a digital native individual do when they've got to do their first print job, i.e. what should they do to ensure their first print job goes well?
Well, first of all, they've got to understand what are they trying to achieve with it. Are they trying to, is it a selling piece? Is it a communication piece? Is it a information piece? Understand what they're trying to achieve. Speak to professionals that can help them in that area to try and understand their requirements. And then it comes down to what they're trying to achieve by design purpose, what size should it be, what pagination should it be personalised, should it be static. So it really is understanding the brief. And then once you know the brief from the customer, it's a question of then hand-holding them through the process to a potential budget that they have to make sure they're getting a good return on investment, really.
And what are the best platforms to use or software tools? Because you mentioned InDesign earlier, but let's say I'm a designer and I'm using Canva, which is obviously very, very common. It's an off-the-shelf product. I know with Canva, a lot of people use it for social media, for example, and the standard Canva, if you export it, it goes into RGB, so red, green and blue. Obviously, we work in printing trade in 4 colours, CMYK. You can convert it, but then you've got things like crop marks, bleed, all that kind of stuff. So if you were starting out, what would be the software or the tool you would recommend to use?
If you're starting out from scratch, the software packages have sort of consolidated over the years. So you really need to use an Adobe Creative Cloud license. So your standard page makeup application is InDesign. Adobe Photoshop is your image retouching application, and Illustrator is for creating what's called vector graphics, because there's a difference between vector graphics and Photoshop, which are pixel graphics, basically. So yeah, you need the suite really. If you want to be a complete graphic designer doing page makeup, that's ideal. You can create files that are printable from other applications, and again, we have the workflows and the systems that we need to understand what the customer has, and we can help them to then PDF whatever they want to supply to print to a print ready file. So there's things we can do with the systems, with various toolboxes that are built into the workflows now, and device links, so you can take it from, you mentioned before, RGB, which you can't print RGB. RGB is your screen, to cyan, magenta, yellow, black, so CMYK for print purposes.
Yeah, that's good. Good advice for the newbie to print, that's for sure. And with that, I think we're wrapping up now. So thank you very much, Andy, for being on the podcast. Really interesting. Hopefully the listeners and the viewers find that interesting and educational. And I'm sure Andy would be more than happy to offer to advice to any people who wants to understand a bit more about it. But thank you for now. So that's it from this episode 4 of From Brief to Broadcast. Please give us a like and a follow on Apple or Spotify, or even on the 8 Group YouTube channel. You can catch it on there. But for now, that's it for us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.